On your left.
Five Nights at Freddy's 2 has now officially released in theaters, and with that, it is time for us to go into full spoilers on the movie. So that's exactly what I'll be doing here for you guys. I'll be giving you my spoiler review for Five Nights at Freddy's 2, diving into the things I thought the movie did right while talking about some of the things I still think it needs to improve on with the next movie. Easter eggs, references, the ending, the post-credits scene, and even message in the credits. Heck, we'll even do a little bit of talking on how low the Rotten Tomatoes score and how the critics are just absolutely hating this movie. But it won't just be about my discussions. I want to hear from you guys, what you love, what you dislike, because I'm seeing even a good amount of fans who did come out also a little underwhelmed and disappointed with this movie. Are you still tapped in for that third film, or are you just like, nope, I'll just stick to the game lore? Love to hear it all down below. Okay, so getting into it here, just to reiterate some of my thoughts, I knew this movie was not going to be well liked, okay? It's pretty obvious when watching it, unless you're a fan of Five Nights at Freddy's, this movie was just not going to be for you. And it was the thing I was wondering when going into this film. The first movie, I think there's some people who aren't aware of Five Nights at Freddy's, the lore, the games, the references, that maybe could have found some enjoyment with that first film. With this second movie, I don't see how that's possible without you knowing some background knowledge, having the homework, or having a built-in love for the series, because the movie fully leans in to being just for the fans. And I think that's why you're seeing that insanely low Rotten Tomatoes score, to where as of me recording it, it's at 15%, which I think is a little harsh. But that's what the score is going to look like when you only try to focus on servicing the fans and everyone else is just, sorry, don't know why you're watching this. But it feels like at the end of the day, these movies might also just be critic proof that although they have these really low scores, the fan base still seems to be big enough and strong enough to sustain it, where I don't think Blumhouse cares about the bad reviews. I'm sure they're going to still consistently try to improve and tweak on where they can. But after this weekend, if it turns out to be as profitable as it's looking, with over a 50 million opening weekend, which would be awesome for the film, given that the budget is only around 35 million, they're not going to care if critics are poo-pooing it, as long as those fast heads are purchasing tickets. But okay, trying to look at the movie and find the good and the bad within it, I want to start off with the opening scene, because like I said, that is by far the best part of this movie. It peaked early for me. I really liked how before we even got to the Universal logo, you had William Afton at the little Showtime button announcing, "Are you ready to start the show? 3, 2, like, it's just great that they included that in there into the movie, and it set the tone very well. And also, it was just nice to see the pizzeria filled with kids everywhere. We were hoping to see that in the first movie, but we only ever got glimpses of that with the employee training video that Mike had to watch. So this time around, seeing the pizzeria with a carousel, the river, kids having birthday parties, all that, like, I think that's just cool. But then that's where we meet Charlotte, who seems to be kind of a loner. She's not having a good time, but she's there for a birthday party with Vanessa as a child. But she's not interested in the cake or the birthday party. She's like, I'm waiting for the marionette. I'm connected to her. I love her. It's dialogue that, again, means something to the fans. To an outsider viewing in, you're just like, oh, this dialogue is just, I get it. She's connected to the animatronic. It was kind of rough to hear, especially the moments too where she starts seeing something go abrupt, the little kid being taken away by the yellow rabbit, and she goes to every adult like, help me, something's going on. The adults are talking. Away, sweetie. That kind of dialogue was crazy. I'd like to think if a random kid came up to me saying, help me, they're in danger, I wouldn't just shove my hand in their face and go, hey, how about you 6'7" over there, you brat? And what I also found interesting in that moment that like is really setting up the stage for this evil Vanessa arc is that Vanessa was trying to stop Charlotte. Vanessa was like, no, just let it happen, all right? My dad does what he does, and we get cake, Charlotte. Just let it be. That kid wasn't good anyway. He picks his boogers and eats them, all right? So he was gonna die eventually. Evolution. That's what it felt like. I thought it was crazy that Vanessa was like, just let that happen, all right? We're having a good time over here. But she doesn't, and she follows along. And this is where I was hoping it'd be a longer sequence of like her being chased by the yellow rabbit. Because again, That's the stuff I'm loving the most. It was my favorite sequence in the first movie when Matthew Lillard came out and was beating up Josh Hutcherson's character. But it ended up being pretty quick, and I did like the camera angle they did through the hallway, tilting it at an angle with Yellow Rabbit getting really close, and she falls on the stage, kid in hand, yelling everywhere, and I was like, all right, pretty crazy. I can't believe the Yellow Rabbit didn't get her. She falls forward, and you see 3 stabs to the back. Oh! I genuinely had my mouth to the ground. I said, oh, there's blood. A child's dead. William stabbed her. Ooh, that's crazy. That's okay. Good job. You're pushing it a little bit. And what a great shot, too, that when she falls through the trapdoor and the marionette is carrying her, symbolizing the bond that they will eventually form, leading into the title card. Yeah, the opening was pretty peak. Again, I still wish there was more Matthew Lillard, but that I thought was the best part of the whole movie. Now, when looking at the video game lore and how the movie is tackling it, pretty different. Because from what I understand, in the video game, the puppet slash marionette is made to protect Charlotte. It's a creation by her father, Henry Emily, who... I don't know why the movie decided to do this. We don't know Skeet Ulrich is Henry Emily until the ending of the movie where he leaves Mike a little voice message. Huh? That's the kind of stuff that pisses critics off, because it's like, I'm new into this world. You're supposed to introduce me to these characters. You're supposed to flesh them out and reveal their importance. When you play out a movie and I'm just supposed to know through my outside knowledge of the film, it does take away, and that's why some people aren't enjoying it. Like, there was a perfect opportunity to be like, hey, I'm Henry Emily. I was once a partner of Matthew Lillard, and that's why my kid was always hanging around Freddy's, and she was a big fan of the marionette. I built it for her. Like, so much stuff they could have added on, but they really only gave Skeet Ulrich one scene with Josh Hutcherson. I found it kind of weird that they're like, oh, I'm Henry Emily. I was his partner, and he's coming for me. So I was underwhelmed with how the movie went about explaining that aspect. From there, though, we move on to Mike and the life he's living with his sister Abby. It looks like his aunt got committed for talking all this crazy nonsense about living animatronics. Pretty funny way to explain now why Mike has custody of his younger sister. But it's also these stories and tales that the aunt was telling that fueled the town to start having Faz Fest, this celebration of Five Nights at Freddy's, or I should just say Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria, where people who remember going there as a kid have like a little festival and whatnot. Honestly, that was another kind of disappointing or underwhelming part of the movie. Like, it's a looming thing that's being built up throughout the movie, and you're thinking with the toy animatronics being let loose on the town, maybe there'd be a bit of a massacre or at least a couple of people dying, but all in all, not much happens at Faz Fest. I would have liked at least one kill or something crazy to go down in there, other than just Toy Freddy walking. But tonight, Mike has a date with Vanessa, and Abby at school is working on her robotics project, which this was an interesting part. I do think this will come into play later, and this is just something they're setting up for Abby, that she's going to be maybe a little tech savvy or be able to work on animatronics, and this is like the building blocks for that. She has a really stern teacher played by Wayne Knight, who, yeah, let's just face it, this guy was an a-hole, and I could not wait for Toy Chica to just pummel him. He was already being so rude to Abby, who was just trying to show an interest into the robotics class, but because she wasn't as good, he was afraid she would ruin their winning streak, and so whenever he dropped that toy at the fair, I was like, all right, let me at him. Let me get to him. You don't mess with little Abby, okay? She's the most innocent one of this movie. But that's what's going on right now in Abby's life. We then finally cut to Mike, who goes on the date with Vanessa, and you do start to think that maybe it's Mike trying to be romantic with Vanessa, start a relationship there, but it seemed to me like Mike is just more frustrated that he's giving Vanessa time to heal from the things that she went through in the first movie, but at the end of the day, he's like, all right, though, you need to tell me the full story about your dad, why he's a killer, how much do you know, are you aware about my brother Garrett? We had no Garrett updates in this movie. That surprised me. I thought we'd get a little bit more about his brother. Maybe that storyline's just done now. And as the movie goes on, Mike gets increasingly frustrated that Vanessa's holding back information. And yeah, Vanessa was starting to piss me off because it's like, how are you not telling us everything? It seems like you want to be the good guy and you don't like your dad, but at the same time, you're just as sneaky and evil. That's where I want to bring up some wild, crazy fan theories going around that I'm like, I don't even know if they're doing this, and if they do, I will laugh. At one point, we get a flashback scene, which is the other way Matthew Lillard gets involved in the movie, is through a flashback to her childhood, where she runs into the office of her father, sees blueprints, and we get a pretty giant Easter egg to the sister location animatronic that is usually built by William Afton for his daughter. We know in the game she gets scooped and gets killed and all this stuff. To me, I honestly don't know how to take that scene. Because one part of me is like, okay, that's just a little fun Easter egg, and the fans who know, and that means a lot to them. But then I'm also like, but will it mean more, or is it just gonna stay an Easter egg? Because like in the games, William Afton's daughter ends up getting scooped, killed by that same animatronic, and through Circus Baby killing Elizabeth Afton, she ends up becoming robotic. And there's literally people who have been theorizing since the first movie that Vanessa might actually be a robot this whole time. It got kind of debunked when she like bled a little bit in the first movie and was even in the hospital, where I'm pretty sure they'd be able to tell if she was a robot. But now this has refueled those theories that maybe young Vanessa did die as a kid and she's a robot as an adult. I kid you not, there were several people theorizing that online. I don't know if that's how far the lore will go, but okay, cool. A Circus Baby little Easter egg, that was awesome. I also do wonder if then that's the first time Vanessa has confronted her father, and maybe that's when he went into hiding, because we get a scene of her going upstairs, shooting her dad. He falls down the stairs, telling his daughter, "You'll always be mine." And remember how in the first movie, it just didn't feel right that like William Afton in the first film goes, "I always come back." And we're like, well, this is the first time we see you, Mr. Afton. Oh, we don't know if you've ever come back. Have you? And so maybe that was the moment where he appeared to be dead, appeared to be gone, but then he changed his name, stayed in the same town, working as a person who helped other people get jobs, and he came back. Okay. And so all that is happening with our main characters, and then we cut to a scene with these paranormal investigators led by McKenna Grace, where I honestly thought that scene was going to be the opening of the movie, and whenever it finally came into the movie, I was like, oh yeah, this guy has to be a thing. It's also funny because of the time period, you would assume they're like YouTubers or podcasters, but because it's like the early 2000s or 90s, they're just more a local channel on TV. But they were able to go to the original Five Nights at Freddy's thanks to a security guard who was working there so that they can film some footage for an episode. And this is where being in a room filled with Five Nights at Freddy's fans was just so apparent, because the minute this night security guard came onto the scene and told everybody, "Oh, you're Mike," and he's like, "Actually, call me Michael," with them evil eyebrows. You gotta do the evil eyebrow thing. The audience gasped. The audience was like, and I was like, oh, you freaking nerds. Okay, I get who he is now. From that moment on, it was just like 1,000% obvious to every fan, okay, that's gonna be Michael Afton. And I'm shocked. I really thought Mike Schmidt was kind of our Michael Afton for this universe. Not again that he was gonna be related to William Afton, but because his name was Mike, he just kind of filled in that role. But no, we have a Michael Afton, and he kind of plays what William Afton did in the first movie. He shows up for a bit in the beginning and then won't show up again until the end. Another piece of advice for the writers and people making the movie: when you want to do a big reveal at the end of your film and like shock the audience, you can't just have a guy show up in the beginning and then show up again at the end and be like, "It was me the whole time." That's not how like a mystery big reveal works. It's like, well, no, duh, dude. We haven't seen you the whole time. Of course you've been doing sneaky things and plucking them nice, scary eyebrows. Again, if you were a fan of the games, you knew immediately once he said his name was Michael, everything that would be about him. If you knew nothing and were watching this movie, you're just like, the random scary guy turned out to be real life scary? Okay, that checks out. But here's also then where I start like getting a bit confused with what the movie was trying to tell, because they start exploring, and it was kind of cool. I'll give them props for the PG-13 kills. Mangle takes one kid, a bunch of little plushy marionettes kill another in the water, and you get to see some blood. And the possession stuff with the marionette and McKenna Grace, that took me by surprise. I know there was like that leaked photo online where people managed to actually see McKenna Grace on the monitor being possessed as the marionette. I did not think it was actually going to play like that in the movie, since that's not really something that happens in the games. But that ended up being one of the scariest aspects of the film, whether it was the marionette possessing McKenna Grace or Abby. Both of those looked actually pretty terrifying, and I do applaud them for that because the marionette was pretty creepy. But as the film goes on, we kind of find out he needed to do this because his end goal is to finish what his father started, was letting these animatronics loose and I guess killing people. But really what ends up happening is more Charlotte takes over. I mean, you could say the real villain of the movie is Charlotte as the marionette, who is just trying to get revenge on all the kids who are now 20 years older that day that she died and nobody helped her. That's who the toy animatronics go after once they're let loose, but they can't go out yet because there's a perimeter lock on them and they're just stuck inside the pizzeria. The way they get out of this is Vanessa knows the code and they just need to type it in the computer so they can be let loose. How come Vanessa's the only one that knows the code? Wouldn't Michael Afton also know as a child of William Afton? That's kind of where I was like, why did you need Vanessa for this? Couldn't Michael just have given the codes and let them do what they do? I've seen already some fans speculate it's because William Afton does say in the flashback, "You're my favorite," so maybe he just let his little daughter know those secret codes, and so Michael wouldn't know it? I guess who knows, but it is pretty funny that like Mike has to stay behind at the pizzeria trying to hack the computer. But even though it's only the early 2000s, they have full-on trackers and wireless signals that reach across town. It's stuff where you have to suspend your disbelief. That's where I think they were really having fun with the fans, where he talks about like, how come there's not a door here? I can't believe there's not a door. He's basically playing the Five Nights at Freddy's game with the flashlight, looking around, and at one moment, Shadow Bonnie appears. That again got a kind of a clap from my audience. Introducing the whole mechanic where you put a mask over the face. And it's another perfect example of like, if you're a fan and you know that mechanic from the game you grew up playing, it's like, oh cool, they did it. If you don't, that honestly just looks ridiculous and dumb. Josh Hutcherson's just holding up a big old mask and these super advanced robots are like, yep, that checks out. This guy's clear, y'all. Except for Foxy. Foxy's got a glitch. So it's again stuff where it's like, I get why fans clap at that. I totally get why critics hated that. Focusing a little bit on the animatronics in general, though, the toy animatronics were fun to see. I mean, Toy Chica gets the most screen time out of all of them, so you know that made me a happy man. Megan Fox did do a fine job, and I thought there were a couple of funny lines with the way she was acting. Again, I was hoping MatPat's voice was just a little bit more recognizable, but no, I would have never guessed that was him. All this eventually leads to a big battle at Mike's house where they're going after Abby. I'm kind of glad they showed that scene with Abby getting possessed, not only because it was a pretty creepy effect, but it showed getting possessed by the marionette doesn't kill you, and they did have the whole music box thing that is from the games that keeps it away, which again, if you're a fan, you know that reference and that connection from the game. You're like, oh cool, they did the music box thing. If you're a critic watching this, you're like, oh gee, the one item Skeet Ulrich gave Mike saying, hey, I made this music box, can you give it to her? Wonder if that's gonna come in handy. And so it did. Which again just makes you wonder, you believe that much in your daughter and all that, how come you've never stepped foot in that pizzeria then, man? He did say he was a bad father, so I guess so that there's that reason. But this was also probably the funniest part of the movie, because everything is just going off, right? You got the toy animatronics, you got the Withered, Mike, Abby, Vanessa, all of them are there. They're all gonna die. And the portals open like Avengers Endgame. Theme starts a blaring, and you could just hear someone in the back of the theater yell, "We are FNAF!" I thought that was such a funny scene. The OG animatronics, the real friends of Abby from the first movie, come back in there, and then they just tear apart all the other ones, destroy them. It's a moment where it's like, dude, you're either on board with this franchise or you're not, and I totally get why fans would be like, kind of cringe, but also give me a high five. I cannot wait till TikTokers get their hands on that footage, because it's going to be edited in memes so hard. And here's then like, where the movie, I was like, look, this is slightly better than the first, only marginally, just because of how much they've added with the kills, the jump scares, and all these animatronics. But the frustration was gearing on, and then you start getting into the things they're setting up for the next movie, and I was really digging that. So for one, because the OG animatronics use the last of their life force or battery, whatever you want to call it, to go and help Abby and destroy those animatronics, they are now gone, and they're no longer able to keep William Afton in the original pizzeria. And there is a moment that the ghost kid turns to Mike and says, hey, we can't hold him now. He's gonna be stronger than ever. And Mike's like, what are you talking about, man? And then he just disappears. Obviously meaning Springtrap. And I was like, you know what? I actually kind of like that as the setup for the next movie. It's like the OG animatronics were keeping him at bay this whole time. He was locked away at the pizzeria, but now there's no one left to stop him. Also wonder what they will do with Michael Afton, because like it didn't show that they killed him. At least I don't remember that they did. So he's just kind of still out there. Obviously, we got to talk about the Vanessa thing, because Mike rightfully is like, because of you not telling us everything, we ended up in this mess. Stay away from me and my family. And the marionette decides to possess Vanessa. So curious what the implications of that for the next movie are. I kind of only see it going one way, but that's where I'll talk about the post-credit scene first. So then we get to the post-credit scene. It's the pizzeria from the first movie. A couple of guys have broken in because they want to do a haunted house for Five Nights at Freddy's, which is something that happens in the game. Sometimes the pizzeria is turned into a haunted house. Fazbear's Fright, the horror attraction. So it's already setting up things from the third movie in here. And they go to the back and they find Springtrap. They mention that he smells because William Afton's body's rotten inside him. And we get a glow of an eye, which is an Easter egg for fans. And now we are finally at the spot where I am going to get the Five Nights at Freddy's movie I have been waiting for. Because it really is just Matthew Lillard as William Afton that I am so excited to see. And now it looks with that third movie, it is going to be all about him. He's already been mentioning in interviews that it'll mainly about him and the Afton family. We'll be exploring that more. He's even talking about Skeet Ulrich being a big part of that third movie. And that would make sense with the message at the end of the film where he does reveal himself to be Henry Emily, his partner, worked on a lot of the animatronics. So we could get some flashback scenes of them together and finally having some scenes together because they didn't in this movie. And I think that'll probably end up being my favorite movie of the film if it's just William Afton. I don't even need more animatronics. You already did 3 different sets of animatronics in this movie. Just give me Springtrap and all Matthew Lillard holding a knife, going after and trying to kill some people. I will be most pleased with that. They probably won't, but hey, I'm not going to turn down any more animatronics. How I think the Vanessa thing will come into play is, well, at the end of the day, you got to remember, it's Charlotte taking over Vanessa. And who was responsible for Charlotte's death? Springtrap, William Afton. So although she might start off as an antagonist a little bit with Mike and Abby, she is going to want to help and fight against Springtrap and put an end to him. And also, since it's Vanessa's body, then that's a double reason to go after her father. So it's almost going to be like Vanessa and Charlotte working together to be able to defeat her dad. Again, I'm also hoping we get some closure for Mike and the Garrett storyline, because although we can kind of infer what happened to him and that he's gone, still feels like Mike is wanting closure on that since he hasn't really gotten that. I think Abby being an animatronic tinkerer would come back into play since it was her OG friends that kind of went dead because their parts weren't good. They literally mentioned the Withered are there for spare parts. Abby now knowing a little bit about how animatronics work, she could take those spare parts from the Withered, put them in her friends, and bring them back, and then be there for the big battle with Springtrap Marvel style. That's again, though, someone who's very casual with the lore and knowledge. Some of you guys might go deeper and crazier, like telling me, no, Vanessa's a robot, bro. I got the proof. All right. Just give me Toy Chica then. Unrelated, but I still need it. That's all I got to say, though, about this movie. Like I said, though, I'm just excited for the movie they're building up towards. I can't be too mad about this movie not really reaching expectations because fans are having a good time, man. You sit in that theater and there's literally dozens on dozens of people clapping, cheering, having a good time. It's like, who am I to rain on that parade? But I also think fans shouldn't be so protective and argumentative about like, oh, critics don't understand, because these movies are clearly being made with just the fans in mind, so it's gonna alienate those who aren't fans or knowledgeable in it. Let me know what you think about the movie. Don't forget to like, subscribe, follow me on Twitter at 3C Films or on TikTok at 3C Films. But as always,